Hello sir, my name is Sai Krishna. I completed my graduation in civil engineering from NIT Warangal and my optional is political science. So you mentioned about the freebie debate. So that is going on in the country since the past 6-7 months. Like, do you think that the freebie culture is a result of the state's inability to develop basic human needs or basic capacities in health, education and other sectors like agriculture? Is it because of the state's failure to provide inclusive development that this culture is going on, and how can we address it in the long term?
It's certainly a part of the problem, but not the sole problem, because in countries where the state capacity is great, where they are much better developed, still freebies are very popular, must understand. United States, what did Biden do? He gave, the moment he came to power, $1,400 for each taxpayer, just cash. The present inflation and the global recession is largely a result of American profligacy. Or Biden waived all the student loans, very popular, but again there's a price to pay. In France, for instance, the president is making a reasonable case that the retirement age must be increased so that the pension burden on the future generations will not be so heavy. He is very unpopular for that reason. So, human beings always want a short-term benefit. Leadership has to have the capacity to make them look at the long term and reconcile these two. You cannot ignore the short-term benefits also, because a democracy cannot be run if you ignore completely the short-term pain. But if that's all that you address, then it's no longer a government. The challenge is, how do you balance this? So first, the perspective is not this or the other. How do you balance that? The second is, as a part of that, if the people understand what is happening with the tax money, what is the benefit they are getting, it is more likely that they will be persuaded to sacrifice a little bit in the short term and look at the long term. And when the country is dysfunctional, a delivery is terrible, it's much harder to make that case. Therefore, if you now wait for a long-term solution, how we make, because the best way to make this better is effective local governments, empowerment to a point where citizen understands where the tax money is going. I always give one simple example. I live in an apartment complex. We all elected one person called Mohit Bhalla as our leader and his team. Every month we pay the maintenance fee. Each of us knows why we are paying that fee. I want the lift to be maintained properly, the watch and ward to be taken care of, the parking should be orderly, water supply should be there for every apartment. I know exactly what. If any of these things don't happen, I know what is the loss I suffer. I will holler. Now, if he says, I will do something free, I'll beat him up. Who the hell are you to do anything free? I am giving you money. I gave you the authority over a collective. And I know exactly what I need, what I want. So I don't need anything from you. Do your bloody job. So that clarity comes because there's a direct link between my decision to put him in office and what he delivers. And direct link between the money I pay, in this case you call it taxes or whatever, and the services I am entitled to get. The more centralized the government is, the more the vote becomes a tamasha, a jamboree. Our democracy is a jamboree. It's a tamasha. It's a celebration. Tirunal antame. Tirunal ante telusa? Jatra. We all celebrate it. But ultimately it's a jatra. You have no clue why you are voting, whom you are voting, and what happens as a consequence of the voting. This is hardly a democracy. And therefore genuine empowerment is accountability. But that's a long-term thing. I've been fighting for it for a long time. I came this close to getting it done in the country, but some idiot stopped it, and now I don't see the appetite for this in the short term. It will take some more time. So what can we do very quickly? There's also a moral dimension here. You take the pension, old pension scheme versus the national pension system, or you take borrowing money for current expenditure. So what does it mean? If I borrow for current expenditure without creating assets, I am burdening your generation and your future generation with a debt without creating assets and income for you. Supposing your parents do it in your family, would you tolerate that? They will be regarded as demons. They will be renegades. Whichever be the caste, whichever be the region or religion, they will be the most worthless parents, right? How can your government be better? At least with the tax money you spend in whatever manner, even if it's not helpful to the country outright, it's current expenditure. Current generation made the political choices. I elected you fellows. You decided for me. I have to bear the consequences. But how can you make the future generation bear the consequences? That is what borrowed money spending on current expenditure means. That is what an unfunded pension liability in the future for the services rendered today means. So you have to have fiscal rules. In my judgment, these are the two minimal rules. Anything more than that will not work. Because after all, government is elected. Elected government is sovereign. And the central feature of sovereignty is how do you spend the public money. If that right is denied to a government, good government or bad government, it's the choice we made. Then there is no longer any democracy. If you tell them you don't spend this money in this way or that way, it's no longer democracy. But there are two central rules. You cannot spend borrowed money for current expenditure. How you spend is your business. But you have no right to impose a burden on the next generation who have not voted without giving something in return. You are taking away their money 20 years later. That's a perfectly reasonable proposition. This is called the golden rule in economics. The second principle, you cannot have an unfunded long-term legal liability. I've used words very carefully. Unfunded long-term legal liability. You cannot come out of it. It's not a policy where I say, sorry, it's not working, I'll come back. Once I declare a pension, it's now a legal entitlement. 20, 30, 40 years later, you still have to continue to pay. I don't pay. I die. But you, as our inheritors, as taxpayers, you will be forced to pay. You cannot do that. If you want to pay that, put the money today in the basket from the current budget. You do what you like. If the political system wants you to do it, if you feel compelled to do it, no problem. Some wise people may do it differently, unwise people may do it foolishly. But they are elected after they have right to do, wisely or unwisely. But your money, not future money. I think these two rules, if we incorporate and institutionalize, the country will be safer. And in each state there will be differences in perspective, political parties act differently, but the basics must be in place. Otherwise, I can guarantee you, there will be destruction, there will be no India left. And the Constitution provides space for that. Our Constitution makers understood that, therefore they created Article 293 and several other articles. And the Vajpayee government actually brought in the FRBM Act, which is by and large accepted by all the states, and Government of India gave incentives to states to apply FRBM Act. And then the NPS, the National Pension System, again was instituted by Vajpayee government. Unfortunately, because the short-term considerations of political power, state after state is now going back. All those states, if they stick to OPS, they will be destroyed by 2035, 36. They're finished. The future is sealed. So one of the things I am doing very aggressively and systematically the last 2-3 months, my average sleep was about 4 to 5 hours a night. I'm working so hard, harder than ever before, in order to protect this, because if this is not protected, everything else is irrelevant. But at the same time, you must allow the government, elected government, the freedom to do what they think is right, even if you don't like it. But there has to be a boundary. The freedom can't be unrestrained freedom, just like a citizen can't have unrestrained freedom. Elected government cannot claim, elected government cannot claim unrestrained freedom to impose burden on the future generations.
Like and subscribe Eagle Media Works.